The MacVoices Live Commencement Address, Part 1. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by the MacVoices Slack, available to all patrons of MacVoices. Sign up today at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is MacVoices Live. It's Tuesday night. We are in YouTube at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, whatever time that is, wherever you are. We'd love to have you join us for one or more of these sessions because it's always a good time, both in the chat room and on the show. So please mark on your calendar to do this every Tuesday because that's what we do. Tonight's going to be a little bit different. It's spring here in the U.S. in the Northern Hemisphere, and that means a lot of colleges and high schools are graduating, and lots of commencement addresses. And so, you've heard me brag on this panel a lot, that I'll put this panel up against anybody else's panel for the diversity, the intelligence, the experience. And so I thought, why don't we just do a commencement address of our very own? Offering our advice based on our experiences in tech and otherwise to both high school and college students out there. So that's what we're going to do and see how it goes. I will go around, I'll introduce the panel, then we'll get to it. We also, just so you know, we have some of our other friends who had scheduling conflicts. They may or may not stop in briefly to add their thoughts to it. I've asked the panel's members to prepare 2 pieces of advice. That way we don't overburden anybody with all the wisdom, the burden of the wisdom that will come out of this group. So with that, let's find out who's here and get going. Taking the screen, as I always do, Mr. David Ginsburg is up first. David, welcome. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Chuck. Glad to be here. And happy Tuesday. It was a great time to be here.
Yeah, a little disappointed that you didn't put on robes and a mortarboard, but that's the way it goes. Next up, Mr. Mark Fuccio is here, sporting yellow and blue for Ukraine. Mark, good to see you.
Thank you, Chuck, for the invitation. Look forward to discussion with the panelists.
Absolutely. Jeff Gamet is here, as he frequently is. Jeff, good to have you.
It's always good to be here, and I'm sorry I had to miss last week. And I feel like I'm getting recharged now because I'm here with all of you.
Good. Now that's the way it should be. I mean, the recharge part,
Oh, right.
Yeah. Mr. Warren Sklar is here. Warren, good to have you. I guess your wife is still letting you podcast?
She's out of the house again, so I get to podcast once again. Now she's in Chicago, so she's with Dave. Say hi, Dave, to my wife. Hey. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to be back. And Thursday I'll be going to the beach, and it's good to be here.
Okay, great. Last but absolutely not least, Mr. Jim Rea is down in the bottom corner of my screen. Jim, it's great to have you as always.
Jeff, I didn't know you weren't here last week because I wasn't here either.
Right, it was your anniversary.
Yeah, how'd the anniversary celebration go?
We just had a nice little dinner.
Happy anniversary.
Outside place.
Great.
So it was kind of weird. 5:00, like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah. Where's my camera?
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, you heard the introduction and you know what we had planned here. I thought this would be a little bit different. We love getting on here and sharing our opinions. I personally love it when we don't agree because the back and forth, I feel like I always learn something. But I'm hoping I'll learn a few things tonight, even though I'm not graduating from much of anything this year anyway. So I think, you know what? I think I'm going to reverse the order of introduction. And Jim, I'm going to put you up first. The first one to give us a couple bits of wisdom.
Okay. My first thing, this isn't one of my actual bits, don't count this, but if somebody is actually of graduation age watching this, I'm like, really? Go do something else.
Okay. Well, Jim, don't forget we record this too, so there's a better chance that maybe they'll see that.
I'm thinking that's not our demographic, but maybe. So I thought about this, and I tried to come up with some serious things, and I think I did. My first thing advice would be that this is not a drill or a dress rehearsal or spring training. You only get one shot at life. So, take it seriously, and, it's not a joke. So, and take care of yourself. I think especially when I was in my 20s, I wish I'd eaten better and things like that. So that's one. And then my second thing is you're probably going to see a lot more change than you imagine. My grandmother she was born in 1890 and died in 1978. So she started off with horses and buggies, literally, and wound up seeing the moon landings. And I always thought, I'm never going to see that kind of change in my life. But at this point, I'm not so sure about that. The change in my life has been pretty phenomenal. I mean, look at this. I'm sitting here on a camera and, talking to people. At this point, it's all over the country, but it could even be people all over the world. I regularly do Zooms with people that are in Europe and New Zealand and stuff like that. We can analyze, we know we've completely decoded human DNA. This is a computer that's this is a computer that's more powerful than the 370 that my dad worked on in 1970 that filled an entire building. So the change that I've seen in my life is just way beyond what I really anticipated, and I think it's pretty close to horse and buggy to people on the moon. And I don't think any of us can really imagine what the people that are graduating now are going to see by the time they're 70. I kind of wish I was going to be seeing that, but hopefully it'll be amazing, and hopefully more of it will, of course, bad things have happened too. But hopefully a lot of good things will happen. So keep your eye out. Things are going to change.
Jim, I especially like the second piece. Well, I like them both. But the second one, I can't help but think about some of the discussions we have here on this show about just the change we've seen, and not even stretching back to, necessarily our absolute youth, but just the changes we've seen in the past decade or so, is kind of staggering. And yeah, when you start talking about stretching it over a lifetime, that's a really, really good point.
Now, if you also look at TV shows and movies, you can date them by, whether the CRT screens are flat or whether they have, tubes, things like that. And, cell phones. In fact, we're watching a Italian movie that's set, or TV show right now that's set in the 30s, and they have these big, huge phones. And it's like, look at these big, huge phones. But that's another thing that I think of. Like, look, when I was a kid or even a young adult, a long distance call was a big thing, and you almost never did it. And if you did, it was like, hurry, run to the phone. It's long. They're calling long distance. Most of you probably remember that. Well, Warren probably doesn't. Or I know my mom would be like, I guess this was a young adult, like, well, when you go home, call and let it ring twice to let us know you're okay. Because no one wants to pay for that call.
Yeah.
Right. So, yes, we did the ring codes too.
Yep.
And and let it ring, hang up.
Don't pay for that call.
There's a Columbo where, a guy murders somebody and his alibi centers on this, newfangled answering machine. And, it was like the murderer had an answering machine and, that was something that, nobody else had, but he was a rich person that had this newfangled thing. And so he constructed an alibi by recording his voice. And it took a whole TV show for Columbo to figure out that, because, everybody didn't have answering machines. So, if you heard somebody's voice, then that, that had to be in real time. So that's an alibi. Well, not anymore. It's not.
Yeah,
Nope.
Seems kind of quaint by today's standards, but yeah, that's the way it was.
We used to have to use paper maps and, look around like,
And
was that
keep
the street,
change for payphones.
or just payphones.
Yeah.
Or just payphones. Yeah.
What's a payphone? Yeah. It's the world is kind of unrecognizable from the 1960s and even 1970s.
Yeah.
Jim, I remember in elementary school, one of the big assemblies they did. So this would have been probably around 1975. They did this big assembly where this group came in and talked about what our futures are going to be like, and they passed around this mock-up of this device that you'd be able to carry with you everywhere you went, and you'd be able to talk to your family members and see video of them and in real time. And you'd be able to track your location or the location of friends and family. And, they were talking about this amazing technology that eventually we would have maybe by the turn of the century. And, and here we are with iPhones now that do all of this.
Who was this? Because I never, in fact, I would say, like if you go back and look at science fiction books of like the 1960s and even the 70s, almost no one predicted small computers. It was like the science fiction would be like the computer has grown to encompass the entire planet kind of a thing. Computers were big, giant things, and very few, I guess one exception might be the little, what do you call the not transcoder, but the thing in Star Trek? They have tricorder and the little communicator. So that, but most science fiction, a computer was something, I remember computers were punched cards and teletypes.
This wasn't really a computer. It was a communication device. And it could do tracking, but it wasn't everything that we ended up getting with the iPhone. It was a subset of that, but still, it was fascinating that back in the 1970s they were predicting that we weren't that far away from having pocket-sized devices that we could use to communicate with people wirelessly, and we could use. And we could do video chats, and we could track people's locations with these as well.
That was a pretty good predictor. I don't remember ever seeing anybody predicting that. I do remember, Disneyland, which I grew up near Disneyland. They used to have one of the things. They had I think it was a Bell exhibit or something, and they had a little fake phone, video phone thing, and they were like, this is going to be the future. People are going to have video phones. And I remember like in maybe the 90s thinking, well, that's something that never happened and is not ever going to happen. Oops.
Here we are.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, the one thing that seems eternal is as soon as somebody says, no, that'll never happen, that's almost guaranteed that it's going to happen. So.
Well, we still don't really have, AI. And I mean, there was a lot of science fiction was, like HAL 9000, and artificial intelligence, and that we would talk to our computers and they would talk back to us as if they were humans, and things like Asimov's I, Robot. Well, none of that stuff has happened, or really, I think is even. I'm not going to say anything's never going to happen, but I don't.
So, Jim? Would you think?
Don't give them ideas.
Jim, would you think that the current obsession with autonomous self-driving cars, is an updated version of giving people jetpacks so that they can go from place to place and avoid terrestrial traffic jams?
Oh, jetpacks! There's another one that didn't. That we.
That one never took off
in the 1960s, and I remember I had a Tom
Literally.
Swift book where they had or maybe that wasn't maybe Tom Swift, but it was another one. Yeah, I don't know. I think autonomous cars are, I'm a skeptic, for the, probably my lifetime, which isn't, a lot smaller than it used to be. I think people have promised an awful lot more than, although I think it's, it's a lot closer than computers that can talk like people. That's, we really haven't gotten very far on that.
No.
Well, those are two big giant topics that are not part of tonight's show.
Yeah, I was trying to,
but they would be a
Oh,
great.
I made them part of tonight's show.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to start taking notes. This may be seed for a whole lot of future shows, future discussions anyway.
was part of the speech. Part of the speech.
Aren't you regretting putting me first?
No. I think everybody's observations are valid because they're coming from a lot of different angles. So, but the next angle scares me a little bit because I'm going to put Warren up next.
I was wondering why you're scared. No, I definitely don't have that much thought about it. A lot's been said already that I would say, if I was going to say something, but I guess my main thing is do something that you enjoy. And I think Tim Cook had a speech a couple days ago. I read it not too long ago. It says, does something important or something that matters. So, that's how Apple kind of got to Apple, is supposedly, doing something that was important to them. I think, when I think about it, I think about what I would tell my son at this point, who's close to graduation age at this point for college. I would just tell him to enjoy life and do something that you enjoy, and, try to avoid hating your life. And that's where I would go.
That sounds so simple, but it's kind of profound when you look around. I know when I look around and see friends from high school and college and how their lives have turned, or where their lives have taken them, I should say, maybe. Some of those places are not very good. And so that's not bad advice at all, Warren.
Yeah, I mean, you get deeper into it, but if you enjoy what you're doing, you enjoy your life, and you enjoy, the things around you, then we'll have a lot less of these problems that we have now, such as politics issues and and wars and things like that. So I mean, if people could have a better outlook at life, if they're happier what they're doing and they feel like they're helping and producing, hopefully we'll go in a direction that's better than this.
Yep. Good. I don't know what that was.
He was imitating Rodney Dangerfield, which that's a great background that you have there. Rodney was so funny.
Yeah,
that was a great movie. I'm gonna take it off now that I said my piece, but yeah, awesome. Watch the speech that he does at the end, and that's he shovels poop into the chancellor's car. Or was that the speech or the commencement? The commencement is when he shoveled the poop into the car. Not the commencement. He dedicated the library. Next person, Chuck.
What? I don't even know what movie that is.
Back to school. Oh my
Back
God.
to school. Okay.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You don't remember that one, Chuck?
Classic,
Friends.
classic.
No, I
It's
God,
like,
that's a classic.
that's a classic. You need to go back and
It's
can't
hilarious.
believe
Chuck was
you.
probably chemically altered at the time.
no. I always got hung up on Rodney in Caddyshack. So
You didn't like
This was after
in a
that.
Yeah.
bad
You
way
like
or good way.
Caddyshack?
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
a bunch of his Johnny Carson appearances
Oh,
are
my
on YouTube
God.
now, and
Oh.
it's so amazing to look at that, and like that stuff could never be on TV now.
Yeah.
No.
I started watching the Norm Macdonald interviews that he did after he died.
Oh yeah.
So funny. Like, if you watch one, watch the one with the Courtney from the show, not 90210, but
Or Friends?
not Friends. Melrose Place. Courtney, somebody
Oh,
from
Courtney
Melrose
Thorne
Place.
Smith.
That's it. Yeah. So she has an interview with him, and I think Conan, and she's in a movie with, she's doing a movie with the redhead, Carrot Top. And
That's a wonderful interview.
Norm Macdonald just rips her apart. It's hilarious. And the funniest part is right after that, he was right. Her career died. It killed her career.
I don't know. The fact that David Ginsburg starts calling out the actresses from Melrose Place is a little terrifying, but we'll
I
get
tell
to
you.
him
It
later.
just means Davis connected.
Yeah, I guess.
He grew up around my age. So, yeah.
So Jeff, you're up. What do you got for us?
All right. First, when you graduate and you find yourself in the workforce, you'll be told to talk or to take a look at and really focus on your work-life balance. And that is such a horrible, horrible bucket of crap. That is the workforce's way of telling you to prioritize your job over your life. And that is exactly not what you want to do. What you want to do is find your life balance. And your life balance is finding the things that make you feel fulfilled, finding the things that make you happy, and finding the things where you feel like you're contributing in a positive way back to the community. And then you figure out how work fits in with that. Work should never be the priority. Your life is your priority. So that's my first piece of advice. And my second piece of advice is that pants are always optional. And while you may think that I'm offering a flippant piece of advice, I am in fact not. What I mean is that you need to find what it is in yourself that you are comfortable with, who you are, and learn to accept you for yourself. And be okay with that and be comfortable with that. And while other people may not be comfortable with who you are in this very thinly stretched metaphor, because you're not wearing pants, it's all about being true to yourself. And if your true self never wears pants, then don't wear pants, because pants are always optional. And there you go.
Self is not being a serial killer.
I think Chuck's
Unless you're a
speechless.
serial killer, in which case you need to seek professional help immediately.
Jeff, for a minute I thought you were going flippant, and then that is a really interesting. It's a thinly stretched metaphor, but it still works. It really does. That's good advice. That's good advice.
You were so not expecting that, were you?
Well, listen, knowing you, I figured there was going to be a follow-up somewhere. I just wasn't sure where it was going to go. But yeah. Again, looking around, seeing the number of people that seem to be uncomfortable with themselves, and that discomfort seems to take many forms. Sometimes it's trying to change things or bend the world to their way of thinking, and sometimes it's them trying to bend themselves to the world's way of thinking.
Right. Yes. And if you tie my two pieces of advice together, in many cases, it's people trying to reinvent themselves to conform with what they think their job expects of them. And what they end up doing is making themselves incredibly unhappy. And that's a horrible way to go through life.
Yeah. The only thing that I have to wonder when you say conform, I mean, sometimes conforming is fine. Sometimes conforming feels good.
If that's what makes you happy, well, there you go. I'm not saying you have to always be the rebel. You just need to be true to yourself. Yeah,
that's kind of what I was going for. That just because somebody is saying this is what you need to do, hey, maybe that's what you need to do. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So,
I do think that not putting work first is a position of privilege. That
of course it is.
Not everyone has that. I mean, for most of humanity, people were hunter-gatherers and then subsistence farmers. They didn't have to worry about their balance. They just had to worry about eating. So, and there are people
I agree. And
now that are still, basically having to worry about that. So,
yeah, I see that as a critical flaw in our society, because we have created a society where so much of our existence, our lives, have to revolve around work. And so much so that people lose themselves in that. And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, we have the resources, we have the technology to create a world right now where people don't have to spend every waking moment terrified about whether or not they're going to have enough money to pay for food for their children tomorrow.
I think we need to teach both. We have to combine. We have to say to the kids, you need to concentrate on working, keeping the economy going. But, there's also, Jeff is talking about your artistic side and your creative side, and do what, be different, which is Steve Jobs' thing, right? And, that's what he says. So, I mean, it's going to be a balance it's a work-life balance. I think that's what we really have to teach the future, is what's important for work, what's important for your life. And I think we might actually have to add what's important for society, as well. And kind of make a good balance of that. And
I'm going to rephrase what you said a little bit.
Okay.
Because you took it back to work-life balance, and I still say it's life balance. But you need to realistically figure and define where your work fits into that, your job fits into that, and how it fits into that. But if you put it as work-life balance, you're putting work first. And it should be life first, because you're more important than any job. And
but Jim is on the other side. He thinks work first, and you're saying life first. And both can't be first, and both aren't right or wrong. It's going to depend on a lot of things, what's right and what's wrong.
Warren, I don't hear Jeff saying that. I think he's by saying life. So unfortunately, the spectrum work-life. Jeff is using the word life in a different context. I mean, it's about who you are as a person and how you want to spend your time on the planet. At least the way I'm interpreting what he's saying.
yes.
And you could decide, okay, I'll just be a government drone and work at the post office, and have a great family, and I'll coach Little League and things. I'm just embarking on stereotypes, so just bear with me a little bit. Or you could decide, okay, I want to be Wall Street drone, and I'll work 16 hours a day at Goldman Sachs and do what it takes to make myself a gazillionaire by the time I'm 40, and hopefully I don't have a killer heart attack before I reach that goal. So I mean, both are totally acceptable goals depending on what the person wants to do. And I think that's what Jeff Gamet is trying to communicate.
Mark, you said what I'm saying, just without the romantic spin that I was putting on it. But yes, you nailed it.
Thank you.
This Mac Voices Live panel is back in the second part of our Mac Voices Live commencement address to share wisdom from their tech experiences as well as their life experiences. I think you'll be surprised at some of the things that are coming up. Until then, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.